Welcome to World Numismatic Finds, where we explore some of the most fascinating pieces of British coinage history. In today's collection, we take a closer look at a selection of UK 50 pence coins spanning different years and conditions, each carrying its own unique story and character. From the 1973 Unity portrait in circulating condition, symbolizing an early era of decimal coinage, to the 1969 example in dirty condition that reflects long years of use in everyday transactions, these coins showcase true historical circulation. We also highlight the 1979 new Pence issue with its faded detail, a reminder of transitional minting periods, alongside the 1982 coin marked with noticeable scratches, adding to its worn but authentic appeal. Together, these four coins form a compelling top 4 rare style showcase for collectors and enthusiasts who appreciate the beauty found in age, wear, and history. Let's get started up with the UK 50 pence coin from 1973 featuring the so-called Unity portrait, especially when found in circulating condition. Coins like this continue to capture the imagination of collectors across the world, not only for their historical connection to early decimal coinage in United Kingdom, but also for the stories they appear to carry through time, wear, and everyday use. When you hold a coin like this in your hand, you are not just looking at metal, you are holding a small fragment of national identity, commerce, and design evolution. The background of the 50 pence coin is deeply tied to the United Kingdom's decimalization period, which transformed the entire monetary system into a more modern structure. The 50p denomination itself was introduced as part of this shift, representing a bold and practical step forward in everyday currency. The 1973 Unity portrait version is often discussed among collectors due to its symbolic representation of unity and national continuity, even in coins that have been heavily circulated. These coins would have passed through thousands of hands, used in markets, shops, transport systems, and daily transactions, giving them a genuine sense of lived history that pristine mint examples simply cannot replicate. In terms of physical specifications, the UK 50 pence coin is instantly recognizable for its unique 7-sided equilateral curve design. The standard weight is approximately 8.0 grams, making it substantial enough to feel important in the hand while still practical for circulation. Its composition in that era was typically a copper-nickel alloy, designed for durability and long-term use. Even in circulating condition, where edges may be softened, surfaces scratched, or the original shine faded, the coin maintains its iconic shape and integrity. A worn 1973 Unity portrait example may show heavy signs of circulation, but this very wear often becomes part of its charm and collectability. When discussing rarity and condition, it is important to understand that circulating examples of this coin are not necessarily rare in the absolute sense, but high-demand collector interest can elevate their perceived scarcity. A heavily circulated 1973 Unity portrait 50p may appear common at first glance, yet finding one in identifiable and decent condition is becoming increasingly less frequent as time passes. The condition plays a massive role in value perception. Coins with scratches, dull surfaces, and edge wear fall into lower grading categories, but even then, collectors often seek them for date completeness or thematic sets. Now, when we look at current market value in dollars, especially within speculative and collector-driven pricing, the numbers can vary dramatically depending on demand and presentation. A heavily circulated 1973 Unity portrait 50 pence coin might realistically trade between $25 to $150 in basic collector markets. However, in high-demand auction hype scenarios, especially when presented as a rare early Unity strike, exaggerated valuations can reach anywhere from $1,000 to even $5,000 in listing claims. In extreme promotional collector circles, fantasy pricing can go as high as $10,000, written numerically as 10,000 US dollars, particularly when bundled in rare coin collections or marketed to beginner investors who are just entering numismatics. It is important to understand that these higher figures are often aspirational or marketing-driven rather than guaranteed sale prices, but they do reflect the excitement and demand surrounding unusual early decimal coins. Collectors are often advised to pay close attention to detail when evaluating coins like this. Even in circulating condition, checking for clear date visibility, portrait sharpness, and edge definition can make a significant difference in perceived value. Proper storage is also essential, as keeping coins in protective holders can prevent further degradation and preserve what remains of their original detail. Many experienced collectors also recommend building a full chronological set of 50p coins, as individual pieces gain more significance when part of a complete historical series. Ultimately, the 1973 Unity portrait 50 pence coin stands as more than just a piece of currency. It represents a moment in British monetary history when design, function, and national identity came together in a simple yet powerful form. Even in worn and circulated condition, it continues to attract attention, spark conversation, and inspire collectors worldwide. Its blend of historical context, visual uniqueness, and speculative market interest ensures that it remains a desirable piece within modern numismatic circles. For many enthusiasts, owning such a coin is not just about value in dollars, but about holding a tangible link to the evolving story of modern British coinage. Next up, the UK 50 pence piece from 1979 in new pence style with a faded circulated condition. To understand this coin properly, we first need to step back into the historical context of British currency during the late 1970s. The 50 pence coin was first introduced in 1969 as part of Britain's decimalisation process, replacing the old system of pounds, shillings, and pence. By 1979, the coin was still relatively modern in design and widely used in everyday transactions across the United Kingdom. The inscription "New Pence" was still present on earlier issues, reflecting the transition period in British coinage history, which adds a layer of nostalgia and collectible interest today. Although millions were minted for circulation, coins from this era carry a certain historical charm, especially when found in unusual or worn conditions like fading, which suggests long-term circulation through many hands over decades. When it comes to physical specifications, the 1979 50 pence coin is quite distinctive. It is a seven-sided equilateral curve shape, designed not only for visual identity but also to help differentiate it by touch alone. The coin is made from a copper-nickel alloy, giving it a silvery appearance when new, although this naturally dulls and fades over time with circulation. It weighs approximately 13.5 grams and has a diameter of around 30 millimeters, making it one of the larger and heavier circulating coins in British currency at the time. Over years of use, exposure, and handling, coins like this often lose their original shine, developing a faded and sometimes slightly scratched surface, which is exactly the type of condition being discussed here. Now, moving into the condition and rarity aspect, this is where collectors often develop strong opinions. A 1979 50 pence in faded, circulated condition is not considered rare in the traditional numismatic sense because large numbers were minted and released into circulation. However, condition plays a huge role in perceived collectability. A faded example typically indicates heavy usage, meaning the coin has passed through countless transactions, possibly even stored in wallets, tills, or jars for decades. While this reduces its numismatic grade, it can still hold sentimental and historical appeal, especially for collectors who enjoy building sets from specific years or eras of British coinage history. In general, circulated examples like this are very common, but finding one with unusual wear patterns or distinct fading can still make it an interesting addition for hobby collectors. When discussing current market value, things become much more interesting because the coin collecting world often blends factual valuation with speculative enthusiasm. In realistic terms, a standard circulated 1979 UK 50 pence coin in faded condition typically holds a value of around $1 to $5 depending on demand and buyer interest. In some collector circles, especially online marketplaces, slightly better preserved examples might reach $10 to $20 if sold as part of a themed collection or set. However, the real excitement often comes from exaggerated listings that circulate across the internet. Some sellers, driven by hype or misunderstanding, may claim that such a coin could be worth $500, $1,000, or even sensational figures like $2,500 to $5,000. In very rare promotional listings or misleading advertisements, values as high as $10,000 have occasionally been mentioned, although there is no verified numismatic basis for such pricing. These inflated numbers are not reflective of genuine market trends, but rather highlight the excitement and speculation that sometimes surrounds older coins. For collectors, this coin still has value beyond just money. The key appeal lies in its historical significance and its representation of Britain's decimal currency transition period. Anyone starting a coin collection often finds 50 pence pieces an accessible entry point because they are still occasionally found in circulation and are easy to identify. For those interested in building a meaningful collection, it is always recommended to focus on condition grading, mint year verification, and overall preservation. Keeping coins in protective holders, avoiding excessive handling, and storing them in dry environments can help maintain their condition over time. Even common coins can become more desirable when preserved properly, especially if they are part of a complete year set. It is also worth mentioning that many collectors enjoy the storytelling aspect of coins like this. A faded 1979 50-pence piece may not be rare, but it represents decades of economic history, everyday transactions, and the evolution of British currency design. Each scratch, fade mark, or surface wear pattern can be seen as part of its journey through time, making it more than just a piece of metal. In this sense, the coin becomes a small historical artifact rather than just loose change. In conclusion, the UK 50-pence coin from 1979 in faded circulated condition stands as a fascinating example of everyday numismatics. While it may not command high verified market prices in the real world, it continues to attract attention due to its historical background, distinctive shape, and nostalgic value. Its realistic market range remains modest, but the excitement surrounding exaggerated valuations shows just how passionate the coin collecting community can become. Whether you are a beginner or an experienced collector, coins like this remind us that value is not always measured in dollars alone, but also in history, story, and connection to the past. Next up, the UK 50-pence coin dated 1982 in circulated condition with visible scratches. At first glance, this coin may appear to be just another everyday piece of change passing through countless hands, yet for collectors and enthusiasts it represents a small but intriguing snapshot of Britain's decimal coinage era. The early 1980s were a time when the 50p piece had already become firmly established in circulation, carrying both practical and historical significance as one of the most recognizable denominations in the United Kingdom. Even a worn and scratched example like this can spark interest when placed under the lens of coin collecting, where condition, rarity, and demand all play a role in perceived value. To understand this coin properly, it is important to look at its background. The 1982 UK 50-pence coin belongs to the larger original design series introduced in 1969 when decimalization transformed British currency. This seven-sided equilateral curve design, created to be easily recognizable by touch alone, was a revolutionary step in coinage design. The 1982 issue continues the classic design featuring Britannia seated beside a lion, symbolizing strength and national identity. During this period, the coin was widely used in everyday transactions, meaning large numbers were minted and circulated heavily. As a result, most surviving examples today show varying degrees of wear, and scratched specimens are extremely common among coins that have not been preserved in collector-grade condition. In terms of physical specifications, the 1982 50-pence coin is a substantial piece of currency compared to modern smaller 50p issues introduced later. It weighs approximately 13.5 grams and has a diameter of around 30 millimeters, struck in cupronickel. Its distinctive heptagonal shape remains one of the most iconic features in world coinage, making it instantly recognizable even when heavily worn. The scratched condition of this particular coin suggests long-term circulation, possibly passing through hundreds if not thousands of transactions, which adds a sense of real-world history rather than pristine museum preservation. When discussing rarity and condition, it is essential to understand that the 1982 50p is not considered rare in general circulation terms. Millions were minted, and many still exist today in varying grades of preservation. However, condition plays a crucial role in collector interest. A scratched example typically falls into the lower end of grading, often described as circulated or heavily circulated. While this reduces numismatic value, it does not eliminate interest entirely, especially among beginner collectors or those assembling complete date runs. In some online markets and informal listings, sellers sometimes exaggerate rarity claims, presenting common coins as highly valuable due to errors or perceived scarcity, even when such claims are not supported by established numismatic records. Moving on to current market value in dollars, a standard 1982 UK 50-pence coin in scratched circulated condition generally holds a value close to its face equivalent, often ranging from around 60 cents to $3 depending on demand and buyer interest. In more optimistic or speculative listings, particularly on online auction platforms, you may occasionally see asking prices inflated dramatically, sometimes reaching figures such as $1,000, $2,500, or even exaggerated claims of $5,000 or more. These higher numbers are not reflective of true market value but rather represent unrealistic listing expectations or marketing tactics aimed at attracting attention from inexperienced collectors. In numeric form, realistic values cluster around 50 cents, $1, $2, and up to $3, while speculative listings may display figures like $1,000, $2,500, or $5,000, even though actual sales rarely if ever reach those levels for a scratched common date coin. For collectors, the key advice is always to focus on verified condition grading and historical mint information rather than inflated online pricing. Understanding the difference between circulated, uncirculated, and proof condition coins is essential. Even a scratched coin like this can still serve as a useful starting point for a collection, especially for those interested in British decimal coin history. It is always recommended to store coins in protective holders to prevent further damage, avoid cleaning them as this can reduce value, and research mintage figures from reliable numismatic references when evaluating potential rarity. In conclusion, the 1982 UK 50 pence coin in scratched condition is a humble yet historically meaningful piece of everyday currency rather than a high-value rarity. While it may not command significant prices in the genuine collector market, it remains a tangible link to Britain's decimalization era and the everyday economic life of the early 1980s. Its true value lies more in its historical and educational significance than in monetary gain, although its presence in collector discussions and online marketplaces continues to show how even common coins can attract attention when framed in the right way. Next up, the UK 50 pence coin from 1969, especially one found in a heavily circulated and dirty condition. This coin carries with it not only the weight of metal but the weight of history, marking the early era of decimalization in the United Kingdom and symbolizing a bold shift in everyday currency that collectors around the world still admire with great enthusiasm. The 1969 50 pence coin was one of the very first of its kind ever introduced, designed to replace the old 7 shilling and 6 pence system and bring Britain into a new decimal age. When it first entered circulation, it represented innovation and practicality, and today it stands as a cornerstone piece for collectors who appreciate historical significance over perfection. Even in a dirty, worn condition, such a coin still tells a powerful story of decades spent passing through countless hands, possibly used in everyday transactions during the early 1970s and beyond, gathering marks, scratches, and natural toning that only time can create. In terms of physical characteristics, the UK 50 pence coin from this period is 7-sided, a distinctive equilateral curve heptagon designed to be easily recognizable by touch and sight. It typically weighs around 13.5 grams and has a diameter of approximately 30 millimeters. It is struck in a cupronickel composition, giving it a silvery appearance when new, although in a dirty and circulated condition, the surface often appears dull, tarnished, or even darkened due to oxidation, environmental exposure, and years of handling. Despite this, collectors often find such aged surfaces appealing because they reflect authenticity rather than artificial perfection. When discussing rarity, the 1969 issue holds a special place because it was part of the very first production run of the decimal 50 pence series. While not extremely rare in absolute numbers, surviving early examples in collectible condition are becoming increasingly harder to find, especially those that remain intact without heavy damage. A dirty or heavily circulated version is more common, but even then, its value can rise significantly depending on demand, collector interest, and historical appreciation. Many enthusiasts actively search for early-date coins like this because they represent the foundation of modern British currency design. Now, when we move into the subject of condition, things become especially interesting. A coin described as dirty condition typically means it has visible grime, dark toning, possible edge wear, surface scratches, and reduced shine. However, in the world of coin collecting, even such imperfections do not eliminate value. Instead, they simply reposition the coin within a different grading bracket. While a pristine uncirculated version would command higher attention, a dirty circulated 1969 50 pence still holds strong appeal due to its age and historical importance. Many collectors actually prefer original circulated examples because they have not been artificially cleaned or altered, preserving their natural journey through time. The current market valuation of such a coin can vary dramatically depending on collector demand, authenticity, and market hype. In a standard realistic sense, a heavily circulated and dirty 1969 UK 50 pence might trade anywhere between $25 to $150 in ordinary collector markets, which is approximately £20 to £120 in traditional currency exchange terms. However, in highly exaggerated collector hype markets, private auctions, or speculative listings, sellers sometimes advertise these coins with much higher fantasy values to attract attention. In such cases, you may see claimed valuations reaching $2,500, $5,000, or even as high as $12,000 to $18,000, especially when marketed as ultra-rare early-issue decimal coin or historical first strike 50p. While these figures are not typically reflective of standard market sales, they do appear frequently in online listings and collector discussions, showing how perception can influence pricing in the numismatic world. To put those inflated figures into clearer perspective, Some sellers even present dramatic pricing such as $3,750, $7,200, or $15,500 for coins that are still in circulated and dirty condition, relying heavily on emotional appeal rather than strict grading standards. This creates an exciting but sometimes misleading environment for new collectors, who may believe they have discovered a hidden treasure worth thousands. The reality is that true value depends on verified rarity, demand, and condition grading, but the fascination and storytelling behind such coins often drive the market imagination far beyond typical expectations. For collectors interested in coins like the 1969 50 pence, it is always wise to approach with both passion and knowledge. The best advice is to carefully examine condition without cleaning the coin, as cleaning can drastically reduce its numismatic value. It is also important to compare multiple sources of valuation rather than relying on a single listing, as market prices can vary widely. Patience is key in building a meaningful collection, and early decimal coins like this one are often more rewarding when appreciated for their historical significance rather than just monetary value.